Super. We'll call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. Just before we get started this evening, now that some of us are now back in chambers for this meeting, things are a little bit different, but still the same. I'm just going to go through, before we start, the committee's protocol for tonight. We have 6 applications that were listed on the agenda. We'll go through those and discuss them as we go. Just a couple little housekeeping rules since we're back in chambers. If you have cell phones, if you can place them on mute or silent. I know I'm terrible for that, so good to have that. And when asking any questions, if you're presenting as a delegation, if you can please ask your questions through the chair and not necessarily directly to the person that you're asking the question of. Other than that, the first order of business will be to ask any committee members if they have conflicts of interest with any of the applications on the agenda. A request will be made for any deferrals or withdrawals of applications on the agenda. Following that, the Secretary-Treasurer will read out each application noted on the agenda with a brief description and staff recommendation and include a brief summary of any additional correspondence that's been received. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will be asked to come forward, or if they're online, will be brought into the meeting. In cases where the applicant is appearing online, I will reaffirm with them that they wish to proceed with their application since they won't be able to participate in the meeting at the early stages, just to confirm that. Following that, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask any questions that they have of an applicant, and any members of the public wishing to speak to an application they'll come forward to the podium at the right. There's a little red button on the bar at the front to turn on the microphone. Or if they're online, I don't know if we have any online requests this evening.
Just the applicants.
Okay. Same for them. Either way, they would be brought into the meeting. Name and address for the record. Try to limit their comments to 10 minutes and present any questions or comments that they would have pertinent to that application in that time frame. Persons will not necessarily be allowed to come back to speak to the same application again. So it's important that you get all your questions or comments in there. The one thing I'll get to that in a second. Following all comments, applicants will be afforded some closing comments if they so desire. The committee will then present a decision in the form of a motion. A motion will be discussed and voted upon. If a vote is tied, it will be defeated, and a new motion will be made. And if a motion is defeated, new motions will be made until we have a decision. Notices of the decision will only be provided to those persons who leave their name and address in writing with the Secretary-Treasurer. For those that are in attendance, there's a sign-in sheet at the back. If you're the applicant, obviously you won't need to do that, but if you're here as a delegation, please do that. If you're online, you can email, and I don't have your email address on this particular page, but I will reiterate that in a second. Online, or you can call City Hall and leave a message in the planning department, and I will get to those 2 email addresses and the phone number in a second. Right, just go back to that now. I'm in between meeting scripts. So if you like to leave an email, it would be for Samantha Yoon at Samantha, SAMANTHA.Yoon, YEUNG at portcolborne.ca, or you can leave a voice message at 905-835-2900 extension 204 immediately following the meeting or first thing tomorrow morning. So with that, I will start with any declarations of conflicts of interest. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A1522PC, after checking with the Integrity Commissioner, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest respect to this application, as I may have an indirect interest in the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the members online have any issues?
No.
Not seeing any. Thank you. So with that, I will ask if there's any deferrals or requests for deferrals of applications this evening. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, tonight we have 3 applications up for deferrals. So we have application B0922-PC, and then we also have application A14-22-PC and A17-22-PC.
Thank you. For committee members, I know we're not talking about the applications, but if you guys are all in favor, if I can get a mover and a seconder to accept those deferrals. Gary and Eric seconded. All those in favor of deferring those till further date? That'll be carried. Thank you. So with that then, the first application on the agenda, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first application for tonight is application A13-22-PC, and in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended and section 2.8.12 of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended. And in the matter of the lands legally known as Concession 1, Part Lot 3, in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, located in the Hamlet Residential HR Zone, municipally known as 85A Pleasant Beach Road. And in the matter of an application by the owners Jason and Maureen McCormick for relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13, so as to permit the construction of a garage, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a maximum height of 7.3 meters be provided, whereas the maximum height permitted is 6 meters. A notice has been circulated to the public and required agencies on May 20th and May 13th, 2022, respectively. As of today, the following comments have been received. The Fire, Drainage, and Engineering Department had no objection or comments for the application. The region has no objection to the proposed garage as well. Given the information in the planning report, planning staff recommend application A13-22-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature, as the increase in height from 6 meters to 7.3 meters will not negatively impact the subject parcel or neighboring properties. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site, as the development is located in a suitable location on the site and accessory structures are a permitted use in the HR zone. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements and the structure will remain accessory in nature. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as accessory structures are permitted in the hamlet designation. And that concludes the correspondence of this application.
Thank you. The applicant, are they here in person or online? Right there. So you can, now can they come up in the front tables here?
The podium over there.
Okay, very good. Yep, right in the middle of that gray thing, you'll see a red button. Just put that, when the light comes on, your microphone's good. There you go. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair? No, thank you.
Thank you. Any committee members have any questions of the applicant? Not seeing any. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak to this? Not here. We don't have anyone online. All right, very good. Is there any final comments you want to add? Because there was a lot of discussion. Nope. Okay. So with that, does someone have a recommendation? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A13-22-PC, matter of the lands legally known as Concession 1, Part Lot 3, municipally known as 858 Pleasant Beach Road. The nature of the application, the minor variance application A13-22-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature, as the increase in height from 6 meters to 7.3 will not negatively impact the subject parcel or neighboring properties. 2, is appropriate for development of the site, as the development is located in a suitable location on the site, and accessory structures are permitted use in the HR zone. 3, is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements and the structure will remain accessory in nature. 4, it is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as accessory structures are permitted in the hamlet designation.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Angie? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. There's a 20-day waiting period, but after that, you're good to go.
Perfect.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready with the next application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So our next application is A16-22-PC, and in the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended, and Section 2.8.1.2 of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended, and in the matter of the lands legally known as Lot L and Lot M on Plan 41 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, located in the First Density Residential Zone, municipally known as 134 Rosemount Avenue. And in the matter of an application by the owner, Daryl Ryan, for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended under Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, so as to permit the construction of an accessory structure notwithstanding the following. One, that a maximum height of 7.68 meters be provided, whereas the maximum height permitted is 6 meters. A notice was circulated to the public and required agencies on May 20th and May 13th, 2022, respectively. Please note that the comments are summarized for the purpose of this meeting, but a full copy has been sent to the committee and applicant. Should any member of the public wish to view them, please contact the planning department. As of today, the following comments have been received. Jack and Norma Brower have questions regarding water, hydro, and sewer if the structure becomes an in-suite. They have concerns regarding the permitted uses of accessory structures and the size of the structure. Wayne Kozar has no objection to the accessory structure, however, requests to have no windows installed on the west side of the building on the second floor. He has concerns about the height and proximity to the rear lot line. The Fire and Drainage Department had no objection or comments. Given the information in the planning report, planning staff recommend application A16-22-PC be granted for the following reasons. One, the application is minor in nature, as the increase in height from 6 meters to 7.68 meters will not negatively impact the subject parcel or neighboring properties. Two, it is appropriate for development of the site, as development is located in a suitable location on the site and accessory structures are a permitted use in the R1 zone. Three, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements and the structure will remain accessory in nature. Four, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as accessory structures are permitted in the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence of this application.
Thank you. Is the applicant in the audience this evening? Or are they online? Online? Okay. If the applicant can hear me, I believe your microphone is on mute.
Yes, I just realized how to unclip
There we
it.
go.
Thank you.
No, I won't be able to see them on there?
Doesn't have a video on.
Okay. All right, so at this point, since you came in electronically, I will just reaffirm with you whether you wish to continue with your application or withdraw it this evening.
Continue, please.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
Yes, so the water, hydro, and sewer would be connected to my original house from my house. The size, I believe the square footage of the lot coverage meets the bylaw. And the gentleman with the concerns of his windows, my windows overlooking his lot, on the back side of that garage shop, it will be 19 feet, which meets the 6 meter height. And I was just looking to have the front so I could have a slope on that roof. And there's other neighbors that have a 2-story house right next to him that can look into his yard. And he does live on a corner with no fence that everybody can see at any point.
Okay. Anything further?
No.
Thank you. Do committee members have any questions for the applicant this evening?
No.
Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, or, well, I'll start my question off to the applicant. Do you know if the proposed structure at this time would meet the spatial separation requirements for glazed openings and wall constructions as per the Ontario Building Code?
It would be done through an architect, so they would meet those requirements.
But at this time, do you know if the proposed structure would?
Far as I know, they said I had some of the architects start the work, like to give me just a little bit of a drawing, and then we applied for the minor variance to go along further.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there any members in the public here that wish to speak to this application? Not seeing any. Do we have anyone online for this one? We do not. As far as, I guess through to the applicant, now you mentioned that this building will have sewer and water connections?
I will, yes.
Okay.
I'll attach them to my existing sewer and water that come into my house.
Is that to simply just have like a bathroom in the garage?
Yes.
Okay. There's no proposal to have living quarters in the garage though, correct?
Yes, it's, well, in the future, possibly an in-law suite.
Okay. Now for them to do that, would they have to make that part of their application? I guess my question through to staff at this point.
To you, Mr. Chair, it doesn't necessarily need to be a part of the application just because they're applying for height. We do have requirements for accessory dwelling units. So when they come forward to convert that portion of these accessory structure into a ADU, the biggest thing is that it needs to be less than 40% of the size of the primary dwelling. So we will have to do a review of that when it comes forward at that time. But we have been processing it basically on the pretense that it's not being used for an ADU right now.
Okay, very good. So through to the applicant, you understand that requirement that once if you do convert it, you do have to get a building permit and follow the proper...
Correct. Yes, I'd like, as I'm building it at this stage, like I want it drywalled and everything, so I will be going to the procedure of having it done properly to possibly have it as an in-law suite if it ever came to that point. But all the rough-ins and everything will be done to code for an in-law suite if possible.
So I guess just for my own benefit, have you made application for the building permit already?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you kind of just ran into this situation with the height right off the
The
hop.
height guys, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So if once you get to that stage, I'll assume it'll be treated as if it would be an accessory dwelling if he's going to rough it all in for all of that, correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. I have nothing else. If no one else has anything else, do we have a recommendation? Angie?
Yes. For application A1622-PC, lands legally known as Lot L and Lot M on Plan 41, municipally known as 134 Rosemount Avenue. Okay. That minor variance application A1622-PC be granted for the following reasons. One, the application is minor in nature, and as the increase in height from 6 meters to 7.68 meters will not negatively impact the subject parcel or neighboring properties. Two, It is appropriate for the development of the site as the development is located in a suitable location on the site and accessory structures are a permitted use in the R1 zone. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements and the structure will remain accessory in nature. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as accessory structures are permitted in the urban residential designation.
Thank you. A seconder to that? Gary? Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Just before we vote, at the bottom, can we just make sure we amend that there was written submissions and they were taken into consideration? Thank you. So with that, any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. And Madam Secretary, the next application, and just before you started, just for those people at home, since you can't see the chambers, Member Bruno has left the room for his conflict. So with that, Madam Secretary, the next application, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is a 15-22-PC, and in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended in section 3.1.1 of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended. And in the matter of the lands legally known as Lot 1 and 2 and Part Lot 3 on Plan 1493 in the City of Port Colborne regional municipality of Niagara, located in the mixed-use zone, municipally known as 119 Neff Street, and in the matter of an application by the agent Jason Pizzicarola on the behalf of owners Ralph and Linda Rotella for relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, so as to permit additional parking spaces notwithstanding the following. 1, that the number of spaces required be 1.1 spaces per unit, whereas 1.25 spaces per unit is required for apartment buildings. A notice has been circulated to the public and required agencies on May 20th and May 13th, 2022, respectively. As of today, the following comments has been received. The Fire, Drainage, and Engineering Department had no objection or comments. Given the information in the planning report, planning staff recommend application A15-22-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature as the decrease in required parking will result in 10 less parking spaces than what would be required, and Neff Street permits 12-hour parking. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site as the development is located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements. The subject property will still have ample parking. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as apartments are permitted in the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence of this application.
Thank you. Is the agent for the applicant here this evening? Or, pardon? Is online. Perfect. We can bring him in.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Since you were online, you don't wish to defer or withdraw your application this evening?
How are you?
Thank you. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
I think planning staff did a great job there communicating the current situation at 1.25, the additional parking on Neff Street in case there are visitors and guests. A couple things I guess we could add there is that I believe there are more seniors in the buildings, what I'm told, and regularly when driving by and seeing area photography. It just seems like there's regularly quite a few parking spaces available. So I don't think this will have much of an impact. And that's it.
Thank you. Do any committee members have any questions for the agent this evening? Angie?
Gee, thank you. Through you to Mr. Pizzicola. I do understand that as far as today's renters go, there do seem to be spare spots in the parking lot quite often, and I have seen that myself. But it doesn't bode well for the future, as you know, in that that becomes a potential problem if the type of renter changed. So how would you handle that? Because it's also very unfair to the local residents to have them impacted by cars all over the street.
Yeah, I would say that realistically, I think housing for seniors is always going to be a need.
Mm-hmm.
We have an aging demographic and for quite some time with baby boomers and then the ripple effect coming. So there's definitely always going to be a need, and being in the downtown core with access to many amenities, don't really foresee it being an issue. Also, throughout Niagara, many developments we're working on are being supported at 1-to-1, especially in downtown cores. So yeah, for all those reasons, I think going forward, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you for that. I would suggest, though, maybe you could take it back to Mr. Rotella and have a discussion about possibly designating part or all of the building to seniors. It would be great for the senior population in Port Colborne and solve the parking issues, going forward. Thank you.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, do you have any questions? Good. Is there any members of the public here this evening that wish to speak to this application? Not seeing any. We don't have anyone online, do we? No. Okay. The only question I have to the applicant, so basically the lower part that's highlighted there, you're just going to add 2 stories to that section. Is that correct? Is that a fair?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Because I too, as I went on the weekend and kind of drove around the whole parking lot, and I was in Sunday afternoon-ish. It was I think about 50% filled at that time. Obviously, it's during the day. People were probably out and about. But the other thing I did notice is the entrance off of Main Street has been blocked up. Is that to be a permanent thing coming off of Main Street? Is that because it's a more major road?
To be honest, I'm not sure of that reasoning. There is obviously the main entrance off Neff, so I'm not sure what the history is behind that.
I guess going forward, if that became a permanent closure to that entrance, you probably could add a couple spots there, if worst case, or maybe visitor parking there if you needed to.
Yeah, potentially.
If that entrance is not required. Because if I remember correctly, there was like a barricade across there, so even like for emergency services, you couldn't even access that way, as far as I know. So anyway,
right.
Yeah. So with that, I don't have anything further unless anyone else has anything further. Does someone have a recommendation? Angie, Eric?
All right, I just got to pull it up. This is application A15-22-PC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So application A15-22-PC, the land is legally known as lot 1 and 2 and part lot 3 on plan 1493, municipally known as 119 Neff Street. That minor variance application A15-22-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature, as the decrease in required parking will result in 10 less parking spaces than what would be required, and Neff Street permits 12-hour parking. It is appropriate for the development of the site, as the development is located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the proposal meets the majority of the bylaw requirements. The subject property will still have ample parking. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as apartments are permitted in the urban residential designation.
Thank you. Seconder, Angie, questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. So that concludes the applications for this evening. I'll just give Gary a second to come back in, wherever he is. There he is. Just going to other business. Does anyone have any other business? Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to David, Chris. So there's one, were both applications there was one application that was deferred because the region didn't provide comments. How long did the region have to provide those comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. They were given the adequate amount of time as per the MOU. If you're not familiar, the MOU is a memorandum of understanding for the region and us in order to give them an adequate amount of time to provide notice. They were provided the required amount of time as per the MOU. However, for one of the applications, I believe it was the same for both the applications, if I'm not mistaken, but the regional PSS staff have a checklist that they would send to the homeowner. And as per that checklist, they would give them some conditions to say, you need to expose a run to the septic system for when we do our inspection in order to identify where the septic system is located. There's likely a plethora of other things on that checklist as well. And to my knowledge, the items on that checklist were not met. So when they went to do their inspections, they weren't able to identify the location of the septic system. So it's not that they ran out of time, it's that the applicants did not identify where the septic system was to their requirement.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
I actually had leaned over to Chris and asked the same question, Eric. But I had, I think it's BO 922, and I don't know why I can't find the regional comments right now. But
Let me stop you there. Since it was deferred,
okay.
I suggest you don't talk in specifics about BO 922.
Okay, I can put this in general terms. When you see an application that for whatever reason, the region wants more information, to then not provide the applicant with anything further that might be a shortcoming. It's very hard for me not to use that application. But, you know, if you're going to, and it may not have been that one that Eric was speaking about, but I just found that the region should be forthcoming with all the things as though the application was going through. And when you just say, we'll deal with how we feel about that after you satisfy this one condition, just seems to be not proactive. Because you could solve that, spend a bunch of money, and maybe you can't do the other two, and it would have already fallen on its weakest link.
I think to that point, a little bit of a discussion that I had with Chris about changing of the sequencing of things. I don't know, maybe Chris, you want to elaborate a little bit, but I think the intent is to try to get agency comments, some specific ones to make sure, one, they're going to comment, and to try to find out what those requirements are so that way they can be passed off and maybe get that done before we kind of formally go ahead with notification and set a date and everything else. So that way we can hopefully get past some of these more major hurdles. It's almost like a pre-consultation, reconsultation before the, but that people do, like, there is a requirement for, or maybe there isn't a requirement for pre-consultation, but there is a recommendation that it happen, and that's supposed to be when these things get flushed out. So it's maybe Chris, you can elaborate a little bit more, but I think that was the intent of this kind of little bit of stutter step of, as soon as an application comes in, they can move to try working on these, even though the application is not fully submitted yet. But Chris, maybe I can.
Sure, yeah. So two things there. Essentially, one being, in the instance of this month, the due diligence was done on the region's behalf. Staff are under the impression that it's really the applicant's fault at this point. there was a dialogue sort of sent to us, an exchange of emails essentially saying, this is what we need, a back and forth. But in terms of, I think, Dan, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the pre-consultation, reconsultation type thing, and that's what we're shifting towards. So moving forward, we will be doing away with our application deadlines. So what's going to happen is we are going to be receiving an application, and we're telling the applicant that we have 10 days to review it and check for completeness. And part of that review for completeness will be to sort of do a pre-circulation to the region and the NPCA to ask if they would like to be circulated on the application. If they deem that they want to be circulated, we will tell the applicant, the NPCA and the region want to see this application. They are requiring a fee, and your application is not complete until we receive those fees. Until we receive that fee, then we will be able to process the application. So hopefully that will help streamline some of these confusion issues, because I was telling Dan before the meeting that how we've been operating lately is that we receive an application, we more or less deem it complete on our end, and then after the fact we check with the NPCA and the region if they need to be circulated, at which point the wheels have already started turning, and now we're kind of reaching to different agencies asking for money, checking to see if they want to be circulated, and it becomes a bit of a nightmare for us. So hopefully this will be streamlining the process for us. Hope that kind of clarifies a bit of your question there.
Thank you. When you first received the application, and there's other departments, I'm sorry, say the region and the NPCA, who require a fee, the applicant then needs to, so if he didn't have a pre-con and he comes in with the application and you see that the region and or NPCA or anybody else that charges a fee for the review, the clock's ticking, you now tell them the region won't look at it or the NPCA won't look at it without the fee. So everything's standing still. I just didn't know if it's easier for the fee, notwithstanding it's a bigger check to write, all comes in. And if people don't need to comment, those agencies, that's refunded. But at the end of the day, you're not chasing money. And from what I would perceive, the larger fee at the most is maybe being held for 30 days. So from I don't know. I mean, for some people it might be tough to ante up that much money, but you're either going to have to ante it up anyways, or in this case, you are getting it refunded. So I don't know, if you have the money or credit line or however you can do it, I don't know if that would save any time. It seems to me that in the whole course of things, to not be chasing money, which is not your primary job, sticking to planning would be a good thing.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I mean, in some certain circumstances, we're kind of at the mercy of the region and the NPCA when it comes to those things. If it's discovered that a recommendation was made and they weren't circulated on it, they would have the ability to appeal it. So that's kind of the situation that we're in. So if the region wants to request money, we can't then come back to them and say, we've heard your request, but we're not going to be circulated to you. Just to a bit aside from that as well, the biggest problem with some of these applications are the really minor ones that are outside of the urban boundary. Any consents that are outside of the urban boundary, they automatically go to pre-consultation, at which point it's identified that the region will or will not need to see it. For minor variances, it's not the most efficient use of staff time and of the applicant's time to bring them to a pre-consultation meeting when they're requesting a height variance for 6.3 meters where the requirement is 6 meters, right? So this is kind of the intent of this sort of mini pre-circulation to the region and the NPCA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, and then Angie. Eric first.
Yeah. Through you to Chris. So in Port Colborne, we don't always require a pre-con before any one of these applications come in.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. That is correct. Not every application. It's a little bit at the discretion of staff if we think it's going to be a bit more contentious or if it's going to be requiring more involvement from other agencies, then we'll bring it to pre-con. And like I said, consents outside the urban boundary are mandatory for pre-consultation meetings.
So not all consent applications are require pre-con either?
That's correct. If it's within the urban boundary and we don't think that there's any regional interest, usually there's regional interest if it's along a regional road, which is just Main Street. So if it's the severance of a residential lot, then the region doesn't need to be circulated on that, so no pre-consultation. Same thing goes for the NPCA. There's no NPCA features in the urban boundary.
Do we require at all an informal conversation with planning prior to a submission for either a consent or a minor variance?
You mean informal to the region and NPCA?
No, to the city of Port Colborne. So if someone were just interested in an application, like for example, the city of Welland typically requires an informal process, and sometimes they'll skip a formal pre-con and they just go right to the application. City of St. Catharines, for all consents, require a pre-consultation. Like I understand municipalities do it differently, but typically there's some type of informal conversation prior to a submission.
Yeah, usually there is. Usually it's a discussion with staff about the sketch itself, and we'll give them feedback on it initially. So I guess we do kind of include that as informal, although it's not technically a requirement. If somebody did come to us with an application that was fully completed and a sketch done by an Ontario land surveyor and a check as well, then we would have to say that that's their application. And now we are moving towards that 10-day review period, so that I guess can be used for a little bit more of an informal session as well. So we can use that time to get a better understanding of the application to say either we can support this or we can't support this, and what have you.
Okay, and that this new process should make it quicker, you're saying, correct?
It might not be quicker for the applicant, however, it will be more streamlined.
Okay, because if there's going to be sort of undue delays to the applicant, that is somewhat concerning to me anyways. But my last one is, how quickly do you typically receive comments from agencies when you inquire? Because I know personally I work as an agent, not as in the municipal context. The NPCA, we don't really deal with the NEC here, but NEC and other type of agencies typically take a while to get back. Just on any kind of correspondence.
Yeah. I mean, as per the MOU, we are supposed to receive them within 10 days for minor variances and 14 days for consents. The region usually is pretty good for meeting that. The NPCA is sometimes a little bit of a different story. But I would have to field a guess of anywhere between maybe 10 and 20 days is usually our average time for receiving comments.
So if you inquire with them, you're saying that like whether or not they want to be circulated, it could take potentially 20 days prior to getting a response?
No. So we have been in discussions with the region and the NPCA about this 10-day circulation. We've looped them in and said, this is what we want to do. How much time do you guys think you would need in order to determine if you need to see an application? The region indicated that 5 business days works for them, and then the NPCA said 7 business days right now, but 5 business days once they hire more staff.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Angie?
Thank you. Through you, I guess this would go to staff, to David. I had some real concerns around applications showing up they're repeat applications where it's a property that is same owner within a short time frame. We're seeing yet another request for minor variance. It would be helpful sometimes to see in the report, or in the application rather, the history of applications. Especially when it is the same owner and it is a very short time frame. I noticed, there would have been one tonight that was within a year. They're asking for more, and I just don't think it's a great idea for us to have to deal with these little piecemeal bits. If we can see what's happened, we'll have a better idea of what's really going on with the property. I don't know, is that something that you would consider doing, or is it something that even should be done? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that is a good idea. To my understanding, I thought that I may have done that for one of the reports this month, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm confusing it for another report. But yeah, we should be making that our priority to do that in our reports.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Eric, did you have another question? No. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Just before we conclude the other business, as you can see, we're partially back in council chambers for our meeting. I believe next month, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, the intent is to try to have everyone back into chambers. Unless, obviously, if you're sick or showing signs of COVID or flu or whatever else, it is my understanding that we will continue to have the opportunity to come in remotely. But I guess the hope would be that we can all be here, the applicants can be here. It makes it a little bit more simpler, but we will still have the ability to be somewhat fluid with regards to applicants in cases where if they're consultants out of town, it seems kind of frivolous for them to drive an hour and a half to spend 10 minutes to drive another hour and a half back. If it could be done remotely, and we have the technology now, it seems pretty simple, and we're pretty much all gotten used to it by now. So next month we will try to do that, the majority of us, or all of us if we can, back in chambers going forward. And I was also advised for the committee members as well as the public out there that happen to be listening, that we are going to continue to broadcast Committee of Adjustment meetings via Facebook until further notice. So if you wish to just listen in and not participate, you'll be able to do that from the luxury of your living room or office or what have you.
I just wanted to say I do apologize for not being there in person tonight, but this is a case of not enough time between meetings to get myself there. So
yeah, no worries. Like I say, it works either way. Yeah, so it's good. I know. Last month I was a little disheveled. We had some technical difficulties right at the start there, and I had to do a little scrambling, and the phone was ringing. But anyway, so with that, if there's no other business, I'll look for the minutes of the May 11th, 2022 meeting. A mover and a seconder. Gary, Eric. I did ask that some comments be changed in there with regards to the one application. At the very start, I will say I have to apologize. When I went back and listened to the recording, which is a great thing, I missed asking for deferrals of application at that point and kind of just breezed over it. And since it didn't appear under the new business element, it didn't get captured. It was at the very end of the list. We did have a little brief discussion, I think, at the very, very end of the meeting with regards to that situation. But I guess going forward, the plan would be very similar to today, is that we put all of the applicants under new business. If something needs to get deferred or withdrawn, we can note it at the start. If we know it ahead of time, we can maybe move it to the upper level, so it's listed there just as kind of a bigger poke for us. But I would remind committee members that just because there's a request for a deferral, be it from any party, if the notice has been circulated and the proper signage has been put up, it's really at our discretion whether we want to proceed. I guess going back to the earlier comments, that when an application is made and the monies have been paid and that clock starts ticking, there is a requirement in the Planning Act for a certain period of time from the date of an application being accepted to having a hearing. That starts that process. So I guess just a note of wise to applicants that make sure your stuff's together and you've covered all your bases and you got all your ducks aligned, because just because you ask for a deferral, you may not be granted a deferral. And there is some costs that go along with that if an applicant does request a deferral or withdraws their application. Well, maybe not in the case of withdrawal. I guess if you're just taking it off the docket, it's gone. But anyway, so those things are there, so just kind of a reminder for everyone. So with that, maybe that should have been covered under new business or other business. But anyway, so with that, the minutes are on the table. All those in favor of the minutes, that'll be accepted. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll see you all next month.